Good evening, my dear things. Welcome back, or welcome to the cavern. Since I never reviewed Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, I figured it was time I changed that because I really like the movie, and I've been a huge fan of the books since I was a child, so I don't know why it's taken this long for me to review it since I've seen it a few times since its release. There will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen this, I strongly recommend it. You can now stream it on Prime Video. Unfortunately, when I was going to review it, no one had it, and I lent my copy to someone, so I was happy to find that Amazon finally got it back. I've been a fan, like I said, for a long time. My video of the stories and the legends that inspired them is up in the corner for those of you that may want to check that out. When I first heard about the film, I wasn't sure how it was going to work because they're a group of short stories. I think they did a phenomenal job of finding a way to use the stories as a whole. So the movie is about a group of misfits in a town of people who aren't necessarily kind to those who are different. You have the young adolescent girl Stella, who is a horror writer and a big horror fanatic like myself. And people in the town find her creepy and strange. If I watched this film when I was a teenager, I would have related to her, no problem. I wrote horror stories in high school, and it wasn't well received. I also, of course, have a love for horror. I surprisingly still had a lot of friends, but that probably was because I kept a lot of my interests hidden. I didn't really talk about the horror movies that I watched or the music I listened to, except with my male friends. I mostly talked about whatever the girls were interested in. I had some interest, of course, with them, so that's pretty much, I kept everything separated. However, back to the movie. So the group of misfits enter a haunted house where we learn the story of Sarah Bellows, a girl who was accused of poisoning children who she told her scary stories to. Stella steals the book of scary stories, and Sarah begins writing stories for each of them, whoever was in the house, which appear magically in her book. It was a great way to incorporate the most terrifying stories from the stories. I also liked how they used the artwork from the original books to create the monsters. The Jingly Man, Harold, and the corpse in search of her missing toe were some of the scariest stories that I remember from the book. Although the stories related to the urban legends were also some of my favorites, because I never watched the horror movies that were inspired from those urban legends, like the Hookman. I wouldn't say Bloody Mary because she really wasn't in any movies, like horror movies. Mostly, although you do have Candyman, which was inspired by it to a point, but nothing really solidly based on her. Of course, you had the high beams and somebody going after them in the backseat, hunting them, kind of deal. But I never really saw anything like that as a kid, so that was my first introduction to urban legends. I am hoping for another movie. I did hear rumors that a sequel is in the works, which is honestly amazing for me because I want to know if Stella can find her friends and rescue them. Now we know Tommy is dead. There's no doubt about it. Harold stabs him with a pitchfork and he starts turning into a scarecrow, which was terrifying to watch, even though the guy really freaking deserved it. I was surprised that this movie was so creepy with the PG-13 rating, but I've been noticing some PG-13 horror movies can be pretty scary. I'm happy about that because with the PG-13 rating, you're limited on how much you can get away with. You can't have gore or excessive swearing, which, let's face it, it doesn't make a horror movie, and it doesn't always make the movie scary. I've seen some terrifying horror movies that didn't have gore, The Ring being one of them. The movie still scares me to this day. Samara is the most creepiest villain ever. I don't care. And I think horror movies being made with a PG-13 rating actually will allow for younger audiences to be introduced to horror. Because a lot of the movies that we grew up with from the 80s and 90s were not really appropriate for our ages, but we watched them anyways. Because yes, I'm guilty of it. I watched The Exorcist, Poltergeist, and it all at a young age. So there you go. I also watched Candyman when I probably was too young as well to watch it, but that movie really didn't freak me out. So it's nice that we can actually allow younger audiences to enjoy horror that is kind of not too scary for them. Let me know if there are other PG-13 horror movies that you've seen that you found to be scary in the comments below. I'll probably check them out and see what they're all about. Also, let me know what you thought of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and what you think will be in the next installment. I don't know what stories they'll use for the next one. I'm hoping they'll leave out the urban legend ones though, just because we've heard them so much and we've seen them in movies. It's kind of redundant. I want something different like they did for this. I loved the stories that they used because they were completely different from anything you've seen out there. So here's hoping. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Take care until next time. Bye, everyone.